Well, hello and welcome. You're now listening and perhaps watching the Spark Your Creative podcast. And I am your host, Sharon Burton of Spark Your Creative Coaching. And I am so happy to have you listening and watching us once again. We are continuing our new series, which is Creative Over 40. And this has just been such an interesting series because it's really bringing people who are over 40, just regular people that are constantly in a creative mode and they're getting their creative flow on, and we're learning so much about them, and we're taking this whole concept of creating over 40, not just the creative practice, but other things to help you with your creative practice, which, as you know, that's what I'm about as a creativity coach. And I am so proud to be able to offer this series to you. And we have a interesting guest for this particular iteration of our podcast. And I found out about her on IG, on Instagram, and I find out a lot of interesting people during by being on Instagram and interacting with people. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk with her because um, the one thing about many of us as creatives and creative types is that we tend not to take time to really do what we need to do to create. And I was just talking to our guest a little earlier, and just the fact that a lot of us, particularly in this age group, which is interesting because a lot of the young people get it. They get taking time to be to themselves, but a lot of us are still learning to do what we need to for self-care and to take care of our creative muse. So I want to welcome this special person to our podcast, Wende Whitus. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
I'll take
Wendy,
anything, Sharon. It's
okay,
white. Yep. It's whitus, but it's
Whitus.
also pronounced Whitus by certain families that have the same name. So, yep, I'll take it.
Okay, all right, wonderful, wonderful. Wendy is a freelance production coordinator and location scout in the film industry, which I think is so interesting. And that's a whole nother conversation within itself, but we might get a few questions in about that. Her side passion is teaching others how to maximize their potential by taking regular personal retreat days. And I am a fan of personal retreat days. And that's why I felt Wendy needed to be to talk with you all today. She lives near Charlotte, North Carolina, with her husband, Greg, and they recently celebrated their 30th anniversary, and they have two grown daughters who live nearby. And so Wendy, welcome, welcome, welcome to the
Thank you,
podcast.
Sharon.
And I am so happy to have you. And you know I had noticed that you worked in the film industry, which I thought was really interesting, which, I think people can relate um, to you, not only as a person who celebrates personal retreat days, but also as a creative, as a person who works in the creative industry. And we might get some questions in about the film industry. Who knows? We'll see how today
We'll see.
goes.
We'll see how it goes. I'd love to talk
Yes.
about anything you want to, Sharon. That's great.
All right.
Well, thanks for
So we're
having
going
me.
to start. Let's talk about what a personal retreat day is. How do you define that? And what led you to develop a side business or a brand that's focusing on that?
Sure. So, a personal retreat day is it's wrapped up. The definition is wrapped up in the name. It's personal. It's for you. It's a retreat. So we're retreating from our everyday, day-to-day routine into ourselves. So introspective. And then a day is, I like to define the day as, I'd love people to take a personal retreat day once a month. It might not be a whole day. You may not have time for that, but a half day or a full day, I have found that to be the sweet spot. So once a month. So a personal retreat day, how I came to discover it was actually in a earlier period of my life. My family and I lived overseas for 3 years, and we were part of an organization that before we went overseas, we had a lot of cultural training and how to adapt to a new culture. And part of it was what I loved, what I really resonated with is they were talking about self-care. So how to care for yourself when you're so busy serving other people and learning a language and learning a new culture, which is, you know, a crazy thing to do. But how to care for yourself. And one of the speakers talked about this concept of taking some time for yourself to invest in self-care. So as part of our organization, we actually were required to take a day off a month. And not everyone has that luxury. It was part of our job description. Take a day. Did you do your personal retreat day? That's how important it was to the organization, because they knew that if you were your healthiest self, and I mean that health like body, mind, and spirit, then you were going to be the best contributor to the mission, to the work. So I really took to it. I really dug into it. I explored different ways of kind of tweaking my personal retreat day routine. And it was so, we were overseas for 3 years. It was so valuable to me that even when I no longer had to do it, when we moved back, I thought it was just so valuable that I continued. So I've been doing this pretty regularly off and on for about 10 years now. And I tell you, my family can tell when I don't do it. So it really makes a difference. So that's kind of the origin of the personal retreat day. And I can get more into kind of the nitty gritty of what goes on in one, but that's in a nutshell.
Okay, so this has been a part of your life longer than a lot of people have been adopting these so-called self-care practices. So that's wonderful to hear that you've been doing it, you know, for a fairly long, you know, a decent amount of time. What would you say? Well, describe what a personal retreat day might look like and what the benefits are. I think I kind of know what the benefits, but particularly as a creative person, what would be, what would one might look like for someone who's, you know, you're in the film industry, maybe for an actor or an actress or any kind of creative for that matter. And what would be the benefits of taking one of these days?
Sure. I'd love to tell you a little about my own routine, but I also want to stress that, you know, any listeners out there feel overwhelmed by the list of things that I do. This is kind of a mix and match. And like I said, I tweaked my routine for a personal retreat day over many years. And so anything that I suggest, feel free to take what resonates with you and chuck the rest aside and leave that for another day. But let's start with the benefits, because I love starting with why. Why would you do this? Why would you take an entire day that you could be doing other productive things, checking off your to-do list, just to spend time alone and spend time investing in yourself? Well, that is one of the benefits, is by investing this time, which seems like it might, if you're not a regular practitioner of self-care, might be a waste of time. It actually multiplies your productivity in the days to come, because what you're doing in this personal retreat day, you're getting the rest that you need. You're getting your body moving in a gentle way. So you're reading, you're looking at your calendar, and going back to the previous month and just really reflecting on what's been working, what's not working, what needs to change. And then you're spending some time planning. So planning the next month. Are there some goals that I need to set for this month? Are there some windows of opportunity that I can take to really dive into this creative project that I have, that I've been putting on the back burner or ignoring, that I know I need to get done? Are there things that I can change in my morning routine that would make me happier and more joyful and more productive? So the day is just an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to step back from the pace of life that we all have, that's go, 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 and just think and start to dream again. So especially for creatives, what I really want to stress is that, and creatives that are over 40 and might have been doing the same things over and over again. And frankly, we're skilled at what we do. So we could kind of be on autopilot and forget how to dream. You know, we forget how to be that childlike person again and have all these ideas. So one exciting part of an opportunity to taking a step back in a personal retreat day is giving yourself the room to dream again, and the opportunity to brainstorm new ideas and set new goals. So I can tell I'm very passionate about it because it works. It really works.
I am a fan of personal retreat days, and actually never really thought of it as a thing. You know, I've always been really good about trying to take time off for myself. But I find when you got so much going on, a lot of times I find myself still getting busy with stuff. So what is your advice about really taking that time to do the dreaming, to do because one of the things I'm really big about is working with a lot of clients on setting their creative goals, and then really taking time to sit down and figure out, particularly every 30 days. I usually do it with the moon cycle, like especially the new moon. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to see at the end of the next 30 days? And I give people prompts and, that sort of thing. But I don't know if people really take time to really look back at what they wrote and what they would like to do. I think a lot of times, particularly those of us over 40, we're a generation that just was not encouraged as younger people to take time for ourselves. And so now, you're hearing about that. And we're also seeing a lot of our peers, getting wiped out, especially after post-pandemic. A lot of us are still trying to kind of get ourselves back. A lot of us have a lot of mental stress. We're in that sandwich generation. So it takes a lot of time to carve out time to do creative activities. But, we might have teenage kids, those of us maybe on the younger side. And then we have our older adults, our parents and grandparents that we're taking care of. And, that whole concept of, taking time off and feeling super responsible if we're employed in a situation where our work is important and we have a lot of demands on our time. So, how do you convince people, particularly in our age group, that still wrestle with the fact of taking time off and really sitting back and thinking through our creative dreams, and even just stuff from what we want to see happen in our life, post retirement, or, now we can live at least 3 lives, in our lifetime. What is the next step and that sort of thing. How do you work with people who are just not, they're just not socialized to do this type of thing?
Exactly. It is a learning curve, isn't it? And I totally agree with what you said, that of our generation, we've been raised and trained to care for others above ourselves, that's a virtue. And And it's very noble to care for others. And you're right. I'm in the same situation where I have aging parents that I'm caring for on one hand, grown daughters who still need us for many things. On the other hand, and caring for my husband and our marriage and our jobs and everything that goes along with life. It's so much. And so we have this tendency in our culture and our generation to put ourselves last. And we've been taught, even by some religions, that you're a better person if you deny yourself, right? And serve others first. While that is very noble, it's also wrong, because you can't fill somebody's cup from an empty vessel, right? You have to take care of yourself and invest in yourself first. So the oxygen mask, right? It goes on yourself before it goes on somebody else that you're helping. And since I'm all into the cliches, obviously, it's self-care is never selfish, right? You need to care for yourself first. So it's educating, but it's also identifying what it is that is internally maybe holding you back from caring for yourself. So is it that guilt that we talked about, that, this is kind of what I'm supposed to do, is care for others first? It may be fear. It's often fear, because when you really take time to, do that self-examination of what are the things working in my life, what do I want to tweak, where do I want to go? At age 53 next week for me, what's the next thing in my life? That's a scary thing, because if you set a goal, there's always the chance that you won't reach it. And are you going to feel like a failure? Or are you going to succeed and then say, oh no, now I have to live up to this success? So it's often fear that's holding us back, and that's unrecognized. So really recognizing what is it that's preventing me from really wanting to spend time with myself. It's harder also for extroverts. So I consider myself an introvert. I really like spending time alone. But for extroverts, that's something that I hear from extroverts a lot. I don't even know what I would do with just sitting by myself in my journal for a half day. So there's just different ways of educating people on the benefits. And I think the main thing is just try it. I've had a lot of people that I've talked to about personal retreat days and coached on personal retreat days who've come back and said, I tried it and I love it, and it's on my calendar for the rest of the year. So yeah, just try it and see what it can do for you.
Okay. Personal retreat days. Do you recommend more of a DIY or DIY style, or maybe going somewhere? And I usually try both, but I also know with a lot of people, and the way the economy is right now, I mean, traveling and going to places that used to be, kind of accessible hotels and everything has just gone up, and retreat centers and that sort of thing. What is your suggestions for people that may not have the funds to go away, but want to try to create a personal retreat day at home, and being able to create that environment when you have kids and all kinds of different things going on? What are some tips that you can provide us with that?
Okay, that's a great question, because I started doing some webinars on this with are you familiar with Creative Mornings, the organization?
Oh yeah,
Creative Mornings.
yes. I'm a fan of them.
Oh,
yes.
so great. They did such a good job during the pandemic of offering so many virtual workshops.
Yes, they
people
did.
Just like you and me. And so I was able and fortunate to be able to do a couple of those during the pandemic. And that was a real challenge, is helping people who are living in a studio apartment in the city try to find like, how can I take a retreat when I've got,
All this
the
going on.
walls are closing in on me. And so it's, what I would say is, yeah, you do not have to get out and get away to a center or anything like that. What I love to do, if it's when the weather cooperates and it's nice enough to be outside, is to be outside as much as I can. I'll start with a walk in nature, and I'll sit in a park bench and just with my journal and my thoughts and my books. And so you can do it for completely free. If it's a rainy day, I'll often go to a coffee shop for the journaling portion of it. But most of the time I'm just in my house, and I'll get in a different room or a different corner, or shake things up a bit, put some candles and mood lighting, and have a nice cup of tea, something out of the ordinary to make it feel special. And you're not just sitting on your couch like a normal day. But yeah, you don't have to spend money to do it.
So you recommend probably like having a journal, maybe some prompts that might kind of, get you thinking about, some things that you want to look at. If you want to look at maybe where you want to go creatively, for example, you can find some good prompts, or, some things to think about, such as if you look on my IG feed or some of the things that I do, I have some kind of projective kinds of prompts that I do around new moon. So it's, and just for those that are listening or watching, you may think about, maybe one prompt might be, what have you learned about your creativity, or what are your thoughts about your creative practice? What have you accomplished in the last 30 or last year, whatever time period you want? Another question can be, what lessons have you learned? For example, I know you work with actors and actresses, and maybe even documentary film producers or whatever, because you do scouting, correct?
I do, yes, locations.
Which I think that's such a cool job. I mean, talk about cool job.
It is a cool job. I love it.
I bet. But you may want to look at and think about, okay, what are some goals that I want to reach? What have I been able to do? And, what do I want to see happen in the next 6 to 9 months? What are some of the lessons I've learned? Whether it is going on casting calls, or, if you've done your own videos or whatever, what are some things that you've learned? And, what have you learned about rejection? A lot of people don't want to talk about that, but, or they blame, somebody else for something else that was way out there. But what did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about how to focus on rejection? Or what do you want to be able to do? What are some skills you want to be able to do better when faced with those kinds of things?
We're so on the same page, Sharon. It's amazing. Because yeah, those prompts are exactly some of the things that I do and encourage people to do as well. So
me too.
Also, I saw on your Facebook page, and then a blog that you wrote recently about the goals that you had set for 2020 and how you accomplished those for your creative goals. I was resonating with it so well. I'm like, this is exactly right. She's doing everything that, I could tell that you do this, that you take this time away for yourself in order to have that space, mentally and emotionally, to be able to reach those goals, because you've been intentional about it. You've been intentionally thinking about it, planning for it, asking yourself, recalibrating. That's what it's all about. Yeah,
it is. And, when I think about when I do my personal retreat days, which I really am going to start using that phrase when I do it. One thing I try to do is do at least one. If I can't do one once a month, I do it quarterly. And that especially for those who may not be able to because of so many things. You know, if you can really look at your calendar and really carve out a day or two. If I can get away, I will. And I'll do it as a long weekend.
That's great.
Sometimes I might combine it with something else. For example, if I'm going, let's say on a yoga retreat weekend, you know, I I usually use the down times for my retreat time. And a lot
That's
of
great.
times, if they have an afternoon, that's a whole afternoon you can carve out.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's so
I'm
great.
writing a book. So I've done just writing retreats where I get away and write, but I do carve out time for myself, you know, where I'm not writing and I'm just relaxing and I'm just, you know, thinking through things. You don't have to just do writing, and
Right.
you can do things such as yoga. You can do the, as Wendy talked about, walking. I'm a big hiker, so you know if that's something that you get into. Um, Artist dates. You know, you can infuse an artist date to your personal retreat day, where you can go to a museum or you can go to a live concert where you can just take in music or entertainment or whatever, where you can fuel your inner creative as well. And then maybe jot down some thoughts afterwards. You know, what did you learn? What inspired you about the performance or about what you saw? How can that feed into what you do?
Oh, I
So
love that. That's a great idea. Taking
yeah,
taking input in as well and just like enjoying creativity again, enjoying other people's creativity. It's not just about what we're doing, but also being part of that creative community and appreciating it. Yeah, that's great.
hmm yeah. And you know, I think for those of you that may be extroverts, doing it on a dare. You know, I dare myself to maybe try an afternoon.
Mhm.
You know, you don't have to do a full day, but try an afternoon and just see, how does this work for me? How can the personal retreat day work for me? How can I create a retreat environment in my home? You know, whether it's setting up an altar or setting up a little place where you have, you know, some essential oils going, and, you know, and reading something that's really enriching to you, or, you know, participating in or watching a documentary, not binge watching Netflix, not binge watching Netflix, but
That's right. That's a
watching
different kind of retreat.
that's a different kind of thing, or reality shows, which is one of my guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
But watching something that's related to what you're interested in. Let's say, you know, you want to paint or you're getting into painting, you know, a Frida Kahlo documentary, or a book about her, or a book about somebody else that you admire that's in a creative field that you want to learn about. Um, Even if you don't know where to, you know, documentaries are on YouTube. You could just
Hmm.
take your laptop and put your earbuds in and go to a cafe or someplace different. Or if you've got the Wi-Fi connected to things, if you're out in the park, do it there. Those types of things. And I recommend making sure that you have your coffee made and that you prepare your food ahead of time or have your food delivered, so you don't have to take time, you know, in the kitchen trying to get your stuff together. You want to be able to, when the snack time comes, run and get your snack that's already ready and prepared and come back and continue. You know, it's about you. It's about taking time for yourself. And it's a great mental health activity to do. And yes, you have permission. You can give yourself permission to take that time for yourself and to nurture not only yourself, but your creativity, because your creativity cannot live in chaos and noise. It
Right.
just, you know, it can, sometimes it can be fueled by it to a certain extent, but there's a point that you got to get quiet for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to share, Wendy? How can people find out
Oh,
about you and learning of and getting coached, especially people that
sure.
need a little help with that, you
I
know,
need some
take,
ideas. Exactly. I do have a website. It's www.personalretreatday.com, and all one word, personalretreatday.com. And there I have a blog with lots of ideas, many of which you mentioned just now. I was just celebrating everything that you said. Totally resonating. And I also have there's a grid that I use that you can download for free on my website. And it's just an assessment grid. It's a kind of a cheat sheet way of doing that reflecting and planning that I was talking about earlier. So on that grid, you'll see, we're holistic people. We don't really have, well, we have a physical side, mental side, but we're holistic people. But it's easier sometimes to take a look at those things individually, like your physical self, your mental self, your emotional self, your relationships, your career, your creative projects, for example. And then on that grid, in those different categories, I have different question prompts about looking back at the previous month or quarter, what's been working, what's not working.
Oh, okay.
Is there anything I need to change? Right, exactly. And then looking to the future, are there any goals in this area that I want to set for the next month or quarter? And sometimes there's not. Sometimes the status quo, hey, my health is great, just keep doing what I'm doing. Sometimes it's like, oh, my sleep has really been, I've been, having these looping thoughts at night. I need to think about what's causing that and make a plan to correct it. So it's just a handy tool that you can just download for free and fill out during your personal retreat days. And it's just a great way of tracking kind of your progress over time too, like how you're doing in certain areas. So that's how you can find out about me. I hope to be, I'm actually in the process of creating a prompted journal for personal retreat days. So it'd be a 1-year journal that has prompts. So that's a ways off, but my creative goal is to have that finished by the end of the year. So that you can sign up for my newsletter as well on my website. It's just a MailChimp newsletter I send out once a month. So that's a way to keep in touch and know when that journal is going to be coming out.
Awesome. And I did want to mention one of the things that I'm really big on is celebrating wins, no matter how small.
Yeah.
So think about if you want a celebration, because most people are like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, take yourself out to dinner or something. Give yourself a personal retreat day. Yep. Let that be a reward. Let's work towards that. And let that be the way that you celebrate. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of noise and mayhem. And if you want to do the club thing, God bless you if you have the energy to still do that. But give yourself a personal retreat day. Plan it, put it on your calendar. Check in with Wendy and her resources and see what are some ideas, or give me a call or send me a note, and I'll be more than happy to give you some ideas. Now, Wendy, before I let you go, I have to ask you about the film thing. How long have you been a scout? So when you say that you're a scout, so if there's a film, a movie producer, somebody that comes into North Carolina, is it just in North Carolina? Right. Okay, and
mostly North Carolina. I've done some scouting in Georgia. But yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. So if a movie production comes to town, I'm in Charlotte, which is a pretty big market for the East Coast. Not quite as much as Atlanta, but we're starting to get some films back here in this area. But I also work on commercials and other projects like that. But I work with the director, I read the script, I see what locations are needed for the script, and it's very collaborative with the director and some of the producers. And then it's treasure hunting time, man. I just go out there and knocking on doors and finding the locations that serve the movie, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great way of fueling my creative juices too, because yeah, it's a lot of legwork, which, you know, isn't maybe as creative, but working with those creative types to really capture their vision of what they imagine when they read the script. You know, I imagine the house looking like this, or the coffee shop has to have this element, and then my job is to go out and find it for them.
So have you met any famous actors or actresses, or has it just mostly been just working with these movie producers? And some of them are, you know, big time celebrities too. So
yeah, it's most of what I've been doing is on the lower budget scale. So I haven't worked on anything like an Avengers type movie, but it's so I've worked with some people that and I've met some of the actors, but I'm more working closely with the director and his creative team and the producers, because by the time my job is done, that's when the cameras roll and everything happens.
oh, that sounds so
So I'm on
exciting.
the front end of it, but it is fun, and it's really fun to go see a movie that you've done this and, you know, found the locations for. And I'm the most obnoxious person to go see one of those movies, because I'm like, that's there, and I'm talking, that's there, and I found that this way, and they're like, just let me watch the movie. It's so much fun.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That is such a cool thing. But I appreciate you sharing. And
Sure.
thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate that. And I really,
my honor. Thank you for having me.
and I love North Carolina, and I'm meeting such really cool people. Matter of fact, the next few guests I'm having are based in North Carolina.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, especially the Raleigh-Durham area.
Okay.
So I didn't realize you were in Charlotte. So I said, well, I don't know what that means. I'm not sure what that means.
You need to come visit Northeast, our great state of North Carolina.
I'm planning to try to get down there, hopefully before the end of this year. But wanted to also thank everyone who's watching and listening to the podcast. It is a service of Spark Your Creative Coaching. I coach creative people, or people who want to launch their creativity, particularly people at midlife who are just want to reinvent themselves, or to get the courage to unblock and get focused on a creative part of their life. And so you can learn more about what I do at www.sparkyourcreative.com. And you can get on the email list and be able to find out about workshops and activities that I am providing. And would love for you also to like and subscribe to the YouTube page and to the podcast if you like what you're hearing. And if you're interested in being a guest, maybe have something that you want to share, feel free to contact me. Thanks again, and look forward to the next episode. Take care.